Howdy class. Here are constants in Python. Now, a constant is just another variable, except the variable cannot be changed once it's initialized to a value. Now, constants are prevalent in programming languages. They're used to simply store a value that's going to be used quite frequently throughout. You can imagine that if you had some code that said something like this, x equals, say, 4 times y, well, we can code that just fine. But let's also say that you also then later have a z. Come on. Okay, but suppose you have another instruction that is something like x1 equals 4 times z. And another one, x2 equals 4 times w. I'm just making things up here. Now, the 4s here all represent, some type of a fixed value. And if you code this and then turn your code over to another member of your team or to your supervisor when you're in a development environment, those 4s are going to leave people scratching their head. What does that 4 mean? Where did it come from? What does it represent? And that's what a magic number is. A magic number is sort of an unexplained integer or floating point number, literal, that is used for some magic reason that we don't know about. Now, if we instead use constants, well, that will at least help us, because that constant can help describe what that variable actually is and represents. Also, if we have to suddenly edit our code, we've got these 3 instructions now, but let's say that we had 50 of them and they all used a 4 for whatever reason. Maybe that's some magic constant that we needed to use in our calculations. Well, if we have to change that 4 suddenly to a 5, that means that you now have to edit 50 separate instructions to change all of the 4s to a 5. And isn't that frustrating? Constants let us fix that problem. Absolutely let us fix that problem. Now, I'll show some code in a second. A couple of things about constants. Number one is that we always write their names in all caps. And that is in order to distinguish them from regular old everyday variables. Every programming language that you'll see, if you see a variable in all caps, then you know that that's being treated as a constant. And again, the purpose of them is to reduce frustration and editing. And let me show you why. If we do have that series of instructions that all have 4s, and we needed to change that 4, well, we've got to go now and edit all of those and change them all to 5s, which is just annoying and frustrating. But if we had created a constant, let's say that our variable is, interval, just something to represent that. Well, we could create a variable called interval and just assign it to 4. And interval, note, is in all caps. So this is actually a variable, but it's because it's in all caps, it is formally created as a constant, and Python will not let you go and reassign a value to it. Once you assign the 4 to it, that's it for the whole program. You can't go and reassign it. That's one of the features of constants, is that once they're declared, they can't be reassigned. But then we would just use this in our coding now, interval times y. Let's say z now equals interval times, whatever, w, doesn't matter here. But you can see that we're using this interval in our math expressions now, and that's taking the place of the 4, just like a variable would. Now, the beauty of using this is that if we suddenly need to change, maybe the requirements changed, or our supervisor said, did I say 4? I really meant 5. Well, we don't any longer have to go search through all of our code and find every 4 and change it to a 5. No, all we have to do here is change one variable, or one literal, I should say. We're just going to change that to a 5. And now that 5 then carries forward into all of the named constants. And we no longer have to edit 50 lines. We just edit one character in one line. So that's the beauty of named constants. I encourage you to use them quite often in your programming to simplify and to make your code so much easier to understand.